Thank you so much, Professor Rodia. A few things for our students who are here. Indonesia, before I invite my friend, Professor Dani, Indonesia is the third largest democracy in the world in terms of population. Indonesia is also the largest Muslim population. And Indonesia is the biggest country in Southeast Asia. And of course, my friend Dani will talk about more. But if you look at the South China Sea, which is one of the most critical, important geopolitical issues in 21st century, you would see the role of Indonesia in different ways. So it's not an active claimant, but again, it has a lot of stakes in the South China Sea dispute. In fact, my book is coming up next year on the South China Sea dispute. These things will be clarified in that book. But again, so far, unfortunately or fortunately, there have not been any kind of formal or informal contacts between Indian universities and Indonesian universities much. So what we are hoping is, we would like to be the pioneer in this respect, where we can bring together Indian universities, especially Jindal University and Semarang State University, or even at some point expand this to other universities in Indonesia. Not only Indonesia, but universities in Southeast Asia. That's the reason why this morning our Vice Chancellor, Professor Raj Kumar, and our Registrar, Professor Murthy, had signed MOU with Semarang State University. So we are now officially partners, and I would like to invite our students who are interested in geopolitics or South China Sea, Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, or let's say conflict studies or democratization, ethnic studies for that matter. So Indonesia is a very good case study. In fact, as a political scientist, what we have been talking about is there are scholars who argue that democracy and Islam cannot exist together. In fact, if you look at Indonesia, that is proven wrong. Definitely, democracy and Islam can coexist and can work together. And that's why Indonesia is very important in that respect for people who are interested in looking at this democratization process or democratic transition. So, all right, we'll have plenty of time. We'll open the floor after Professor Dani has given his speech. So please prepare your questions. And if any of our delegation, if you would like to say a few words, I would like to give a chance before I invite the main speaker. Anybody would like to say a few words? No? Okay. All right. Now, I would like to formally invite my dear friend, Professor Dani Muhtada, who is my classmate and coffee mate, to give a talk on the role of Indonesia as a big brother in ASEAN, past, present, and future. You have about, let's say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine. Well, thank you very much, Professor Kipken. I usually call him Papao because it's kind of a friendship tie between me and Dr. Kipken. So if I call him Dr. Kipken, it's a little bit something on my heart. It's not my habit, but that's fine because he's a director of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies at this university, right? Okay, good morning, everybody. I am really humbled, really delighted to be with you all here in this room. And this is an honor for me, Dr. Kipken, that I sit here to talk about Indonesia and ASEAN. Before giving this topic, actually, Dr. Kipken asked me to talk about the dispute between countries on South China Sea, but I said, you more expert than me, so let me talk about just about ASEAN, and we will see how ASEAN can play role in that kind of tensions. Right, so my topic for today's lecture is the role of Indonesia as a big brother in ASEAN. You know, big brother actually is the words of Dr. Kipken, indicating that Indonesia is kind of playing leadership role in ASEAN during the past time, present time, and the future time. And we will see the difference during my talk. So here, I would like to divide my discussion into three. Number one, I'll discuss very briefly about Indonesia, in case some of you have little knowledge about Indonesia. Second one, I will talk very briefly about ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And the last one, I will talk about the role of Indonesia in ASEAN. So, what do you know about Indonesia? How many of you have visited Indonesia? Of course, okay, one, and then only one. I don't expect Dr. Kip can raise the hand. All right. So, Indonesia is exactly located in the center of the intersection between Australian continent and Asia, and between Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. So I think it's very strategic position. If you look at the picture a little bit closer, you can see that there are so many islands in Indonesia, and among these islands, there are 5 biggest islands. Number one is Java, and Jakarta is located in Java. And our town, Semarang, is also located in Java. Semarang is the capital city of Central Java. And then the second one is Sumatra and Borneo at the center of the regions. And we share the region between 3 countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Brunei Darussalam. And then the other island is Sulawesi. It mentioned in that picture Celebes, actually Sulawesi. And then Papua right in the east. So, as you can see here, we have around 17,000 islands. A new report from CIA, United States, they reveal that actually Indonesia has around 18,000 islands from the satellite image. But officially, our government mentioned that our island is around 17,508 during low tide. And of these 17,930 island is inhabited by 1,128 ethnic groups who speak 726 local languages and 1 official language. So in Indonesia, one Indonesian, at least they speak 2 languages. Sometimes one Indonesian speak 2 or more local languages, right? So this indicates that we are really multicultural society. The population in Indonesia is little bit, not little bit I think, is far below Indian. How many population in India? 1 point, how many? 1 point something billion, right? So if you guys come to Indonesia and occupy our country will be defeated by you have a lot of population. And 85% of this 258 million is young people, youth, so it's below 55 years old. The GDP is around 915 billion, and the average growth is 5.2% per year, so it's not bad. About religion, we have 6 official religions. Islam is, of course, the majority. Dr. Kipken already mentioned this, 87%. Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, Hinduism, and Confucian. Outside these 6 official languages, there are so many other minority languages, religions. So here you can see that Dr. Kipken also already mentioned that we are the 3rd largest democracy with the biggest Muslim population. So when people say Islam and democracy does not fit each other, then we can see that in Indonesia, that thesis doesn't work. And we also the largest archipelagic country in the world, and of course the founding members of ASEAN. So, looking at our history. So long time before the 15th century, Indonesia consists of several kingdoms. We have Majapahit, the Hindus kingdom, Sriwijaya, Demak, many other small kingdoms. But after 1595, when the Dutch expedition came to Indonesia, step by step, little by little, the Dutch government conquered those kingdoms until finally, in 1900, all of the regions in Indonesia is just controlled by the Dutch government. Until 1942, when the Japanese government sent the troops to Indonesia and occupy the Dutch East Indies. So the Dutch East Indies is a name of a country before Indonesia exists. So Indonesia is actually ex of Dutch East Indies. Right. 1945, President Sukarno declared our independence and become the country's first president. 1966, he handed emergency powers to General Suharto, and then the new order regime began. And this regime is ruling for about 3 decades, from 1967 until 1998, when the resignation of President Suharto occurred and the formation era happened until now. So, how many presidents do you think we have already? How many presidents, Iriska? Officially, we have 7 presidents, but in fact, we have 9 leaders. 9 leaders. So President Sukarno, and then Mr. Asa'at, when we are in federalism, and then Mr. Safruddin Pranegara, General Suharto, President Habibie, President Gus Dur, President Megawati, President Yudhoyono, and finally, right now, still, President Joko Widodo. That is a brief picture of Indonesia. So far, any question about Indonesia?
I just have one small clarification.
Yep.
Is Norway not the country which has the largest archipelago on its west side? I'm not sure about that because there are a lot of small islands of the Norwegian coast also.
Norway.
Yes, Norway.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My official source indicate that Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country in the world. But we can check it, double check. Right. Any other question? Anyone planning to visit Indonesia? Please, if you do have an intention to visit our campus, maybe take 1 semester or just 2 projects, please come and we can facilitate your intention. All right. Now let's move on to ASEAN. So, probably some of you have learned about ASEAN in the class, but here I would like to remind you that ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations, was established in Bangkok on August 8, 1967 by 5 countries. They are Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. And the declaration of ASEAN was signed by the 5 countries' representative. Number 1 is Mr. Adnan Malik, who was at that time Minister of Foreign Affairs, and then he became the Vice President of General Suharto. And then also Tun Abdul Razak, at that time is Deputy Prime Minister, and in fact he was the 2nd Prime Minister in Malaysian history, and he was also the father of Prime Minister Najib Razak, right? Ex-Prime Minister. And then the 3rd one is Narcisco Ramos, Secretary of Foreign Affairs in the Philippines. Number 4 is Rajaratnam, Minister of Foreign Affairs in Singapore. And then the last one, Tanat Koman, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Thailand, the Kingdom of Thailand. So what is the objective of ASEAN? If we look at the declaration of ASEAN, we can see that ASEAN has 7 aims, 7 goals. Number 1, we have to underline this. Number 1, the goal of ASEAN is to accelerate economic growth, social progress, and cultural development. Italics is by me, because this is very important. Economic growth, social progress, and cultural development in the region through joint endeavors in the spirit of equality and partnership in order to strengthen the foundation for a prosperous and peaceful community of Southeast Asian nations. You have to remember that when once, in the time of the establishment, these ASEAN countries are generally newly independent. The second objective is to promote regional peace and stability through abiding respect for justice and the rule of law in the relationship among countries of the region and adherent to the principle of the United Nations Charter. Third one is to promote active collaboration and mutual assistance on matters of common interest, again, in the economic, social, cultural, technical, scientific, and also administrative fields. Number 4, to provide assistance to each other in the form of training and research facilities in the educational, professional, technical, and administrative spheres. Number 5, this is kind of collaboration. To collaborate more effectively for the greater utilization of their agriculture and industries, because many ASEAN members are agricultural countries. Also the expansion of their trade, including the study of the problems of international commodity trade, the improvement of their transportation and communication facilities, and also the raising of the living standard of their peoples. Number 6 is related to the center that is led by Dr. Kip Ken, is to promote Southeast Asian studies. So your center is actually implementing the objective of ASEAN. 7, to maintain close and beneficial cooperation with existing international and regional organizations with similar aims and purposes and explore all avenues for even closer cooperation among themselves. So those objectives are on the minds of the founding members of ASEAN, 5 members. But how many member countries right now? We have 10, right? 10 members. 1967, we only have 5 members. In Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. 1984, exactly the year of Brunei Darussalam independence, they joined the ASEAN. Then 1995, Vietnam joined the ASEAN. 1997, Laos and Myanmar. And 1999 is Cambodia. And now, in front of the door, is Timor-Leste is waiting, I think. Right. So how these countries interact each other? They have the principles of interaction among them, what they call as the ASEAN fundamental principles. Number 1, mutual respect for the independent sovereignty, equality, territorial integrity, and national identity of all regions, all nations. Number 2, the right of every state to lead its national existence free from external interference, subversion, or coercion. The second principle is very important because, from this principle, people usually call this as ASEAN Way. Have you studied about ASEAN Way? ASEAN Way consists of 2 main principles. Number 1 is principle of non-interference. They mean Indonesia cannot intervene domestic affairs in Malaysia. Malaysia cannot intervene domestic affairs in Myanmar, and so on. The second important principle is that all decision in ASEAN is reached using consensus, not voting. They mean all of the member countries should agree on that kind of things that they want to discuss. Number 3 is non-interference in the internal affairs of one another. Number 4 is settlement of differences or dispute by peaceful manner. Number 4 is renunciation of the threat or use of force. And number 6 is effective cooperation among themselves. So I want to underline that those 6 principles make ASEAN different from other regional organizations such as European Union. Any other student remember or have understanding what is the difference between ASEAN and European Union? Any people? Okay.
Could you say that ASEAN is the European Union is a supranational.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mhm.
Whereas ASEAN is based more on, as you said, it's not based on a voting system, it's based on
Right.
consensus. So,
Yeah,
and in the European Union, they vote. So
that's
I
right.
think that's
Mhm.
I find that to be extremely,
Mhm.
I find the ASEAN way to be extremely beneficial and cooperative.
Right. Can you describe what is supranational
Yeah,
organization is?
supranational, basically, the rules established by the union are overbinding on all member states, and the rules established by the
Mhm.
union together
Right.
are for everyone. Whereas in ASEAN, you don't interfere in the internal affairs of
Right.
each other. So I think
Yes.
that's an important understanding of even sovereignty.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's exactly what I want to listen. I mean, exactly right. So if you see here in my slide, number one difference, number one difference between ASEAN and European Union. Yep. Uh, ASEAN is intergovernmental organization. That means uh, they all members of ASEAN actually different legal entity. They have their own sovereignty, and they don't give up any kind of sovereignty to this organization. On the other hand, European Union is a supranational organization. What does it mean? That means the members of European Union have to give up part of their sovereignty to the organization, economic or currency, things like that. That lead us to the second difference. In ASEAN, there are no common currency. Indonesia has rupiah, right? Malaysia has ringgit. Singapore has dollar. I don't know Myanmar. What do you have, Papao? Huh? Chan. Chan. And then Thailand has baht, right? So there is no single currency in South ASEAN. That means if I want to visit Malaysia, I have to bring my ringgit to buy something. If Malaysian people want to buy something in Indonesia, they have to use rupiah. In Euro, they have common currency. In European Union, that is Euro. This indicates that the members of European Union give up their sovereignty over currency to this organization. So we can see a stronger integration in the economy of the European Union members. And now I'm not sure if ASEAN members will agree to give up that kind of authority. So have a single currency, for example, ASEAN dollar. If that possible, ASEAN dollar, well, that will be good. Number three, of course, because of this kind of non-interference principle, there is no ASEAN parliament, right? Compared to European Union, they have a European Union parliament. Of course, we have the ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly, but that just for communication, coordination, collaboration, things like that. They don't have any legal power to make legislation or anything like that. Number four, ASEAN has a relatively small and weak secretariat, while European Union have very powerful secretariat called the European Commission, right? Number five, in ASEAN, I already mentioned this, that all of the decisions should be reached using consensus, not voting. While in European Union, making decision can be taken using votes of the members. But, there is but. In 2003, we are moving toward a stronger association. By what? By agreement between ASEAN leaders to have or to realize what they call the ASEAN community in 2003. And this agreement was taken at the 9th ASEAN Summit in Bali. And you know, the role of Indonesian government is really crucial in this kind of thing. So what they think about the ASEAN community is actually consists of three pillars. Number one is political security community. Number two is economic community. Number three is cultural community. So from now on, we ASEAN people have one vision of ASEAN. Still vision, right? At least they have a willingness to have more, to have a stronger integration between ASEAN countries. And these three pillars, each of these three pillars have the blueprints. So we also make the blueprint for every pillars. In political security, it mentioned that ASEAN want to be rules-based community of shared norms and values. So even though we are coming from different traditional languages or ethnicities, but we want to have a single community who have shared norms and values. We also want to be a cohesive, peaceful, stable, and resilient region with shared responsibility. And we also want to have a dynamic and outward-looking region. From the perspective of economy, ASEAN members want to achieve a highly integrated and cohesive economy. So maybe European Union inspire the ASEAN members. Number two, they want to reach a competitive, innovative, and dynamic ASEAN. The last one, enhance connectivity and sectoral cooperation. In terms of socio-cultural, ASEAN want to be a committed, participative, and socially responsible community for the benefit of ASEAN peoples. And they want to be an inclusive community that promotes high quality of life, equitable access to opportunities for all, and promotes and protect human rights. So the component of human rights now is under very important consideration of ASEAN. And this idea of ASEAN community is supported by ASEAN Charter 2007, when we had the 13th ASEAN Summit. All ASEAN member countries signed the ASEAN Charter. So the ASEAN Charter make this kind of vision much stronger, right? So the ASEAN Charter consists of the introduction, 13 chapters, 55 articles that requires the application of all ASEAN values, all ASEAN principles, regulation, and objective as stated in various agreements, declaration, convention, treaties, and other basic ASEAN documents. So the Charter legally bind all member countries to implement all agreements that have been mutually agreed upon. It's no longer voluntary, but compulsory, right? And this chapter came into force since December 15, 2008, and it is a very important step for ASEAN to move from loose association into a legal entity that is based on clear rules. So this is actually a very big cornerstone for ASEAN. And now, let's discuss the role of Indonesia as a big brother in ASEAN, right? But before we discuss about this, I have to underline that there is no formal leadership in ASEAN. Why? Because all member countries are equal in ASEAN. So even though Indonesia have a largest population, that doesn't mean that Indonesia should be the leader of ASEAN. So this is something we have to underline. However, traditionally, Indonesia has played a leadership role, right? That's Dr. Kip can call the rule of Big Brother, okay? So it has been also considered by many experts, if you read several journals on ASEAN, many of them consider Indonesia as the de facto leader of ASEAN because of its size and geostrategic position. What kind of position that Indonesia has? Number one, Indonesia's population is around 260 million people, make up of 37.6% of ASEAN's total population. It's really a big number in ASEAN. Number two, Indonesia contribute around 36% of the total combined ASEAN GDP, whereas the nearest three member countries individually contribute no more than 15%. So when the other member only no more than 15%, Indonesia's contribution is about 36%. Number 3, the country's 17,000 islands account for 42.5% of ASEAN's land mass. This is the big proportion in ASEAN. And it is the only G20 member from Southeast Asia and often unofficially speaks for the region. This unique position make Indonesia as kind of big brother in ASEAN. I say big brother, quote unquote, because there is no official document saying that Indonesia is, is actually a big brother in ASEAN. Right. So what kind of leadership role have Indonesia played in ASEAN? I can divide into 3. It's the past time, during 1967 to 2014, and then present time from 2014 until 2019, and future time that is after 2019. Let's see. If we talk about past leadership role, then we have to look at 3 different times, different eras. That is Suharto era, number 1. Second one is Habibie, Abdurrahman and Megawati era. I would like to say this is a transition era to democracy, right? Transition era to democracy. The third one is the era of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. I would like to say this is stronger democracy era. Let's see these 3 eras one by one. Number 1 is Suharto era, during 1967 to 1998. During this era, Indonesia had been the driving force for the development of the ASEAN's norms and institutions and played a significant leadership role. What are the rules? I can show you that the first principle formed with Indonesia as the leading force was the creation of ZOPFAN. What is ZOPFAN? The Zone for Peace, Freedom and Neutrality. That was signed on November 27, 1971, which strengthened the commitment of ASEAN member countries to keep security and political stability of the region. That's a very important step led by Indonesia. The second one is the creation of the fundamental principle of ASEAN, which can be seen in the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in 1976. We have already discussed about this principle, the principle of non-interference and the principle of reaching decision using consensus among all of the country members. Number 3, Indonesia has become an effective mediator during the Cambodian conflict between 1979 and 1991. All of those things is an example of the role of Indonesia in ASEAN under the administration of President Suharto. What happened during the transition era? Well, I have to say that during this era, Indonesia played a very passive role, not active role, in leading ASEAN, or I say to be a driving force in ASEAN. Why? Because we were very busy with our economic and political situation. You know, in 1997, economic crisis hit Southeast Asia, and that affect Indonesia not only economically but also politically. General Suharto stepped down from the power. So President Habibie, President Wahid, and also President Megawati is really busy with their domestic affairs, and they don't have, I think, very much time to concern on foreign affairs, especially on ASEAN. Thankfully, when the democracy is stable during Yudhoyono era, Indonesia enacts various key foreign policies that brought them back to their strategic position in ASEAN. We can see, for example, Yudhoyono's administration has a geographic proximity policy that defines ASEAN as its inner circle priority. So our focus is moved from domestic also to the regions, that is ASEAN. And he also had million friends, zero enemies policy, indicating that Indonesia consider their friend as very important for the development of their countries. And this is very important. ASEAN is considered as the cornerstone of Indonesians' foreign policy. So this returned ASEAN as one of the foreign policy priorities in Indonesia. Not only this kind of policy, Indonesia also initiate institutional reforms of ASEAN. You remember that the ASEAN community and also ASEAN Charter is signed during the Yudhoyono era, especially ASEAN Charter 2007, and also they acting as a mediator during the conflict over the Temple of Prayer Vihear between Cambodia and Thailand. How about now, during Jokowi 2014-2019? Unfortunately, I have to say, many observers, many experts argue that Joko Widodo seemed to be less interested in ASEAN. And its governments move ASEAN from the cornerstone to only a cornerstone of Indonesian foreign policy. Why? Yes, because I think Jokowi is more interested in domestic issues such as building infrastructures and any other kind policies that can support him get re-elected in the next presidential election. So I write here, he is more concerned on issues that can provide tangible political benefits, such as investment and public infrastructure. And I have to say that in this kind of field, Jokowi is very success in building investment and public infrastructures. On South China Sea dispute, this is the expertise of Dr. Kip Ken. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Kip Ken. So Jokowi has shifted Indonesia's position from taking a leadership role in the regional dispute to the assertion of sovereignty of the coast of Natuna Island. So we often say that we are not part of the problem. Indonesia not part of the problem of South China Sea, but at the same time, the government insists that Natuna Sea is firm jurisdiction of Indonesia. Nobody can intervene this jurisdiction. But thank God, surprisingly, at the 13th ASEAN Summit in Manila, 2017, Jokowi suggested that ASEAN must always be a hub for regional diplomacy. So after 2 or 3 years, kind of neglecting ASEAN, during the final years, Jokowi surprised many people that he brought ASEAN into one of his priority. And also he expressed Indonesian support for solution to the Rohingya crisis. Do you know why? Do you know why Jokowi expressed his support to the Rohingya crisis? Do you know why? Because Rohingya people, the majority of them are Muslim. Is it right, Dr. Kip Ken? So, yeah, partly right. Yeah, why? Because in the eye of the Indonesian public, Rohingya is Muslim. So if something happened to Rohingya, that means something happened to the religion. So if president provide an attention to that crisis, then the president will get political benefit before the presidential election, right? So that's why he brought the Rohingya crisis into public attention. How about the future, right? You know, in the last April's general election, President Jokowi is re-elected in the president's election. I would argue that Indonesia's policy on ASEAN would be no much different under the second Jokowi administration. He was re-elected and he will be the president for the next 5 years. But I think there is possibility of improvement. Why? Number one, the president is no longer worried about running for the next presidential election. So he should be able to prioritize not only domestic programs, but also foreign policy as well, they mean ASEAN. Second one, this kind of attention solely depend on the support of the official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If the officials of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if they give enough support, materials for the president, then I think the president will give also priority for ASEAN. I think that's all what I can deliver, Dr. Kipken. Again, if you have any question or confirmation or anything, I would like to discuss about it. Thanks a lot.